My business partner was stealing from me, so I turned the tables on him. I, 34F, never thought I'd be the kind of person to get scammed, especially by someone I trusted. But life has a funny way of teaching you lessons the hard way. I spent years building my business from the ground up, pouring everything I had into it, my time, my energy, my savings. And for a while, it felt like all that hard work had finally paid off. Until I found out my business partner was robbing me blind. I met Jason, 38M, about 5 years ago when I was in the early stages of launching my company. It started as a small but promising venture, a boutique marketing agency catering to niche brands. I was good at what I did, but I wasn't great at handling the financial side of things. That's where Jason came in. We met through a mutual connection, someone who swore up and down that Jason was trustworthy, smart, and a financial whiz. He had experience in business operations, had run his own company before, and seemed like the perfect fit. At the time, I was desperate for help. My business was growing faster than I had anticipated, and while I was good at client relations, branding, and creative direction, I was drowning in spreadsheets, invoices, and tax paperwork. Jason assured me he could handle all of that so I could focus on what I did best. It seemed like a fair partnership. I trusted him completely, and maybe that was my biggest mistake. For the first few years, everything ran smoothly. Our client list grew, our revenue tripled, and we started making a name for ourselves. I finally felt like all the sleepless nights and risk-taking had been worth it. Then, about 6 months ago, I started noticing small inconsistencies. It wasn't anything huge at first, just minor discrepancies in our financial reports, a missing invoice here, an unexpected expense there. Whenever I brought it up, Jason always had an explanation. Oh, that was just a bank error. I forgot to log that expense. My bad. I had to move some numbers around for tax purposes. Don't worry about it. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He had been handling our finances for years without any problems. He was my business partner, the one person who should have had my back. But then the mistakes started adding up. One day, I got an email from one of our vendors asking why we hadn't paid them in 2 months. I was confused. Jason handled all payments. I immediately forwarded the email to him, expecting a quick resolution. Jason called me within minutes, his voice calm and reassuring. It's just a delay in processing, he said smoothly. I already spoke to them. It's being taken care of. But something about his tone felt off. That was the first real crack in the foundation. I decided to start keeping a closer eye on things. I asked for detailed financial reports, pretending it was for tax season. Jason acted completely normal, like he had nothing to hide. But when I finally sat down and looked at the numbers myself, I felt my stomach drop. Thousands of dollars were missing. At first, I thought maybe there had been a mistake, that maybe I had miscalculated something, but the deeper I dug, the worse it got. Jason had been skimming money from our accounts. Small enough amounts that I wouldn't notice right away, but over time, it added up. I sat there, staring at the numbers, my heart pounding. It didn't make sense. Jason made good money. We both did. We had built something incredible together. Why would he do this? I kept digging, and then I found the personal transactions. Payments to restaurants, luxury stores, even a down payment on a brand new car, all coming from our business account. Jason had been living the high life on my hard work. I felt sick. My hands shook as I scrolled through months' worth of transactions. Designer watches, expensive wine, private gym memberships. Jason was bleeding our business dry, funding a lifestyle he never could have afforded on his own. The worst part? He had been smart about it. He never took out huge chunks of money all at once, just small amounts, moved around strategically so they wouldn't raise any red flags. But he had underestimated me. I wasn't just going to confront him. No. If Jason thought he could steal from me and get away with it, he had another thing coming. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up poring over every transaction, every invoice, every financial document I could find. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Jason had been stealing from me for over a year. It wasn't just little purchases here and there. This was premeditated. He had set up fake vendor accounts, issuing payments to companies that didn't exist, companies that, when I cross-checked the account numbers, traced right back to him. I felt sick. This wasn't just him borrowing money or dipping into our funds once in a while. He had built an entire system to funnel money out of our business without me noticing. I wanted to call him right then and there, to scream at him, to demand an explanation. But I stopped myself. Because if I played this right, I could destroy him. By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't just going to confront Jason, I was going to set him up. First, I needed proof. Solid proof. I already had transaction records, but I needed more. I called my lawyer, pretending it was about a routine business matter. Casually, I asked a few hypothetical questions about fraud, embezzlement, and financial mismanagement in partnerships. He confirmed what I already suspected. If I confronted Jason without legal backing, he could easily deny everything, drag me into a long legal battle, or worse, try to take half the company on his way out. But if I could catch him in the act, if I had undeniable evidence, Jason would go down hard. I walked into the office that morning, forcing myself to act completely normal. Jason was already at his desk, sipping coffee, tapping away at his laptop like he hadn't just spent the past year robbing me blind. Hey, he said casually, you good? You look exhausted. I forced a laugh. Yeah, just been up late going over tax stuff. Boring as hell. He smirked. That's why you have me. I wanted to punch him in the face. Instead, I smiled. For the next few weeks, I let Jason believe he had won. I pretended to be stressed about the business, giving him even more control over the finances, even asking for his help with managing vendor payments. He ate it up. Meanwhile, I was working behind the scenes. I hired a forensic accountant, someone my lawyer recommended, to quietly go through our books and compile a detailed report of every fraudulent transaction. I made copies of every bank statement, every suspicious withdrawal, every fake invoice. And then I set the final trap. I created a fake vendor account of my own, a dummy company complete with an official-looking invoice requesting a payment of $10,000. I made it look exactly like the fake companies Jason had been using, same formatting, same vague business descriptions. Then, I left the paperwork on his desk. A test. Would Jason question it? Would he ask me about it? Would he act like a responsible business partner? Or would he approve the payment like he had done with every other scam? I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, I checked the business account. The money was gone. Jason had approved it without hesitation, sending the payment straight to himself. That was the final nail in the coffin. I had him. The next morning, I walked into the office early, armed with a legal team, a forensic accountant, and a termination letter. Jason strolled in, whistling like it was any other day. He set his coffee down, stretched, and then finally noticed that I wasn't alone. He frowned. What's going on? I stood up, sliding a thick folder across the table. Why don't you tell me? He looked at the folder, then back at me. What is this? I crossed my arms. It's everything, every dollar you stole, every fake vendor you created, every fraudulent payment you made. Jason went pale. Don't bother denying it, I continued. I had a forensic accountant go through the books. I have bank records. I have transaction logs. I even set you up with a fake invoice and you fell for it. So unless you have a damn good excuse for why $10,000 disappeared into a fake account, I'd suggest you shut up and listen. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His hands were shaking. Good. He should be scared. I have enough evidence to press criminal charges, I said, but I'm feeling generous today. His head snapped up. What? I slid another document across the table. This is a termination agreement. You sign it, you walk away quietly. No severance, no payout, no stake in the company. You leave and you never come near me or my business again. His jaw clenched. And if I don't? I leaned forward. Then I call the police and you spend the next 10 years explaining to a judge why you embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars. He panicked. I saw it in his eyes. He reached for the papers with shaking hands and skimmed the pages. His breathing was shallow. He knew he was screwed. His voice wavered. I didn't mean... Don't, I snapped. I don't want to hear your excuses. He swallowed hard, grabbed a pen, and signed the agreement. Just like that, Jason was gone. I expected him to try something after I fired him. Maybe some kind of legal battle, maybe slandering me to clients, but he didn't. Why? Because I wasn't finished yet. While Jason thought he had gotten off easy, I had already sent the evidence to the IRS. The forensic accountant flagged multiple tax violations, and I made sure they landed right in the hands of the right authorities. A few months later, Jason was under federal investigation for tax fraud and embezzlement. Turns out I wasn't the only person he had stolen from. He had a history of fraud, one that caught up to him fast. Last I heard, he was drowning in legal fees, had lost his fancy car, and was begging for money from old business contacts. Meanwhile, my company thrived without him. And me? I walked away knowing that karma had done its job. The moment Jason signed the termination agreement, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But I wasn't done yet. I had spent months watching him steal from me, lying to my face, pretending to be my business partner while draining our accounts behind my back. He had walked into this office every single day, acting like he owned the place, like I was lucky to have him managing the finances. And now he was sitting there, pale and shaking, realizing that he had just lost everything. He pushed the papers back toward me, his fingers gripping the edge of the table. "You're really going to do this?" His voice was quieter now, like he was still hoping there was a way out of this. "After everything we built?" I almost laughed. "Everything we built? No, I built this company. I was the one who had stayed up late, taking on extra clients when we could barely pay rent. I was the one who had met with investors, who had secured our biggest contracts, who had taken risks while he sat back and skimmed money out of our accounts." So I just looked at him, completely unfazed. "You did this to yourself." For a second, I thought he might argue, maybe try to gaslight me, spin some sob story about how he had been struggling financially or how it was just a mistake. But he didn't. Maybe he could see that I wasn't going to budge. Maybe he finally understood that I wasn't the naive business owner he had once thought I was. He stood up, jaw tight, pushing his chair back with a little too much force. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll pack my stuff." I didn't stop him. I just watched as he walked to his office, the same one he had sat in for years, pretending to be my partner while treating the company like his personal bank account. It didn't take him long to gather his things, a few framed photos, a laptop, some personal items. He avoided eye contact the entire time. When he finally walked past me toward the door, he paused. "You know, I was going to make you an offer." I raised an eyebrow. "An offer?" He let out a breath, shifting his bag on his shoulder. "I was thinking of buying you out, before all this." I almost burst out laughing. He had to be kidding. "So, what, you were planning to steal from me and take the company?" He shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal. "I had investors lined up. They were ready to put in serious money." He glanced around the office, his lips pressing together. "Guess that's not happening now." I stared at him, trying to decide if he actually believed the nonsense he was spewing or if he was just trying to save face. Either way, it didn't matter. He wasn't my problem anymore. I nodded toward the door. "You should go." He hesitated for just a second before walking out, and just like that, Jason was gone. The office felt different without him, lighter. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I could breathe. No more missing money, no more excuses, no more wondering if my business partner was stabbing me in the back. But I wasn't naive enough to think he would just disappear. People like Jason didn't go down quietly. He had too much pride, too much ego. I had exposed him, humiliated him, taken away everything he had built up for himself. He wouldn't let that go. And I was right. It started small, a few rumors in the industry, whispers that I had forced Jason out unfairly, that I was difficult to work with, that our company was in trouble. A couple of clients asked me if everything was okay, and I reassured them, showing them the numbers, proving that we were better off without Jason. Then, a week later, one of our biggest clients called to say they were considering pulling their contract. I knew exactly who was behind it. Jason couldn't take me down legally, so he was trying to do it professionally. He must have gone to every client he could, spinning some sob story, making it seem like I was the villain. I wasn't going to let that happen. I met with the client in person, laid everything out. I didn't give them the full story. I wasn't about to air my company's dirty laundry, but I gave them enough. I showed them that Jason had been mismanaging our finances, that his removal was necessary. I promised them that our service wouldn't change, that if anything, we were stronger now. They stayed. And that's when I realized something. Jason wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. He was building something else. I did some digging, and sure enough, Jason had already started a new company, a direct competitor. He had reached out to my clients, my vendors, even some of my employees, trying to lure them away. I could have been furious, but honestly, I expected it. And unlike Jason, I wasn't reckless. I had prepared for this. The moment I fired him, I had locked everything down. I changed all the passwords, cut off his access to every system, had my lawyer draft airtight non-compete agreements for my employees, and secured my contracts. Jason could try to steal my clients, but he was about to find out the hard way that burning bridges has consequences. I made a few calls to my contacts, people Jason didn't even know I had relationships with, people who would be very interested in knowing that Jason had a history of financial fraud. Within 2 weeks, his new company collapsed before it even got started. Vendors wouldn't work with him. Clients wouldn't sign on. And employees, the ones he tried to poach, they told me everything. They saw through his lies. Jason had nothing. I thought that would be the end of it. that he would just disappear, licking his wounds, maybe move on to some new scam. But Jason wasn't finished, and neither was I. Jason wasn't the type to go down quietly. I had already blocked his attempts to sabotage my reputation, crushed his pathetic attempt at starting a competing business, and ensured that every major player in our industry knew exactly who he was. But I should have known he wouldn't just disappear. It started with harassment. Anonymous negative reviews about my company popped up online. Some were vague complaints about bad service, others were straight up lies. Claims that I had scammed clients, that I was impossible to work with, that I had stolen ideas from other businesses. I knew it was Jason. Then came the emails. A few of my vendors forwarded me messages from an anonymous sender warning them to be careful working with me. My employees started getting messages on LinkedIn, claims that my company was on the verge of bankruptcy, that I was about to go under. Jason was desperate. I could have ignored it, could have taken the high road, let him burn himself out, but Jason had already stolen from me, lied to me, and tried to ruin me professionally. He didn't deserve the high road. He deserved to be buried. I called my lawyer. Jason had signed an airtight separation agreement when I fired him. That document included non-disparagement clauses, meaning that legally he wasn't allowed to trash talk me, my company, or anyone associated with it. The moment my lawyer started sending cease and desist letters, Jason panicked. At first, he ignored them. Then, when he realized I wasn't bluffing, he tried to play dumb. He claimed he had nothing to do with the fake reviews, that he had no idea who was spreading rumors about my company. But I had proof. I had screenshots, forwarded emails, IP logs linking his messages to the same locations he had used when he worked at my company. He wasn't just sloppy, he was reckless. My lawyer hit him with a defamation lawsuit so hard he probably felt it in his soul. Jason tried to fight it, but he had nothing. He was drowning in legal fees, no company, no reputation left. Within a month, he settled out of court, paying me damages and signing yet another agreement, barring him from ever mentioning my name again. And just like that, he was done. He moved out of state shortly after, probably trying to start over, but no one would work with him. His name was toxic in our industry. He was finished. As for me, my company thrived. Without Jason dragging it down, we grew faster than ever. The clients who had almost left, they stayed. My employees, more loyal than ever. Jason thought he could steal from me, lie to me, and walk away unscathed. He learned the hard way that I don't lose.